Call to order the regular Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, September 11th, 2012. We will start with the invocation. I don't know if is Pastor Bobo here yet? Okay, I'll take care of that. And followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Supervisor Kehoe. Since this is September 11th, it's obviously a very Memorial Day in our lives, and I'd like to just offer that we all would stand and have a moment of silence for those who lost their lives 11 years ago, including those who went in to help save people who were in dire peril, and also to remember all our armed forces and our local law enforcement and firefighters who put their lives on the line every day. So if you have a moment of silence, stand, please. Thank you. Supervisor Kehoe? That was it.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Supervisor Kehoe. The next item is our public comment period. We ask these speakers to come forward to give their name. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to speak. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. Pursuant to the Brown Act, action or board discussion cannot be taken on open time matters other than to receive the comments and, if deemed necessary, to refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up and to schedule the matter on the subsequent board agenda. I do have several people who want to speak this morning. We will start with Els Prigmore, followed by Tammy Orr.
Is this on? Okay. I'm here to speak about the marijuana ordinances or to offer some reflection. As an educator, I'm a principal in a high school district, in the Shasta Union High School District. The use of marijuana has become so commonplace. When we ask students if they smoke, we have to delineate between cigarettes and marijuana. The term recommendation is never used with adolescents. In fact, it's never even been heard of. It's scripts. It doesn't matter if you are under 18. There's a script for every ailment. And marijuana is easier to obtain than cigarettes, and so often it's free. There's no charge, nada. It's prolific. And some of us have had to develop a practice to send kids home to change their clothes during harvest season because the odor is so disruptive to the learning process. Yes, they clip for the family business. The consequences are few, and after all, it's just weed. The abstract of some research provided, which I provided, only solidifies everything we know as educators to be true. The brain undergoes a dynamic change from the onset of puberty through early adulthood, some critical wiring. The chemical assault on the brain affects the motivation center of the brain, as well as future IQ. This study reflects the most persistent adolescent onset cannabis users, evidenced an average 8-point IQ decline from childhood to adulthood. Increasing efforts should be directed toward delaying the onset of cannabis use by young people, particularly given the recent trend of younger ages of cannabis use initiation in the United States, and evidence that fewer adolescents believe that cannabis use is associated with serious health risk. If we see or observe a behavior and ignore it, generally two conclusions are drawn. One, we're naive and we don't know what's going on, so it continues. Or two, we don't care and it still continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bigmore. Our next speaker is Tammy Orr, followed by Kathy Grindstaff.
Good morning, everyone. I normally introduce myself as Tammy, our home care worker. Today, I introduce myself as Tammy, our home care worker, and Ku, statewide vice president of education. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about, and you guys all got these handouts, a little about our community first choice care option. That money has been received by the state and is due to be dispersed. This will reduce our county share from 17.5 to 15.4, which makes up for a 2.1% savings. The Community First Choice Act will enhance Medi-Cal's ability to provide community-based personal attendant services and support to seniors and persons with disabilities to certain enrollees who would otherwise need institutional care. Now, this money is going to go retroactive to December 2001. There's a committee been put together statewide for the implementation and the disbursement of these funds that will oversee all the funds, and the recommendations from the president and the governor that these funds are to be reinvested in the program, not used to balance county budgets. It's exclusively for IHSS workers and recipients. So there are federal and state statutes as to what can be done with that money. We want to, at this time, open a conversation in which we can discover how you plan to reinvest that money into the IHSS program. And I'll read a little bit here. Recent budget cycles have left counties with few options to meet their stated desires to bolster the support of in-home care for their respective populations of the elderly and persons living with disabilities. Now, through the hard work and pressure of the IHSS community, counties are able to reinvest the CFCO savings from their general funds back into the IHSS program and be able to increase the quality of care to constituents. Continued support of IHSS with modest funding increases will be boosted by the CFCO savings to help providers expand health coverage, take further steps towards stable living wages, and provide enough hours for recipient care to protect their dignity and remain safely in their homes rather than costlier institution care. Now, I introduced this to the California State Budget Subcommittee a year and a half ago, and now we're realizing these savings. So, as I said, you can read more in here, and then there's some MOU language in the back. We would like to participate with you in a discovery of how you are going to go along with the recommendations and reinvest these funds into this money-saving program. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ms. Orr. Kathy Grindstaff, followed by Dolores Lucero.
Supervisors, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kathy Grindstaff. I'm the project director for Sobering Choice Coalition. I'm here representing our coalition and members of the community. We want to thank you again for your hard work in adopting ordinances in Shasta County limiting cultivation of marijuana. You gave the planning director the distinction of being the enforcing officer along with Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The trouble with this is the continued shortage of actual personnel to follow up with the many calls made by concerned citizens and additional follow-up on zoning ordinance complaints. The citizens of Shasta County are frustrated, to say the least, with the lack of code enforcement, compliance checks, nuisance abatement, and overall follow-through. You have given the citizens of Shasta County the tools to help fight this ongoing battle against non-compliant marijuana grows, but you lack the staff to actually go out and enforce these ordinances. If we don't work together to eradicate the non-compliant marijuana grows in Shasta County, I hate to say that we will continue to be known as a pot county of California. We, the citizens who have elected you to protect us and lead us into the future, you are sorely lacking in these ordinances and enforcement of these ordinances completely through to the end. These are well-written ordinances. They can serve as an example to other counties in California, and we have the potential to be the leaders. We just need to make sure we can actually follow through with the enforcement. We need to seek out resources to help staff the sheriff and additional help for the planning director. You need to seek out potential ideas from the very citizens who have elected you to your positions. We are the ones living on the front lines and having to deal with another grow season down in the books. with little or no effort made to discourage the non-compliant grows. When you next take the time to review these ordinances, ask us. We are here to help you help us. We want Shasta County to be the example that other counties can model themselves after. We do not want the pot growers to seek out our county for growing their medicine. We do not want to become the pot capital of California. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grindstaff. Dolores Lucero.
Before she steps away, I sent an email to you
Yes.
last night, and I was confused by the email that you sent. What is your purpose in gathering the
think
resources when, let me finish, please. When I referred this to staff to place your request
Right.
on our agenda, so I'm a
Right.
little confused.
Well, I look forward to it being on the agenda, and I think our frustration is, I have been meeting with citizens from the Palisadro area and the Shingletown area, and I think their frustration is they call and they call and they call, and they never see anything. They don't see anything being done on these grows that are in their neighborhoods, and these are very large grows.
Which is what will happen by bringing it to the agenda of the board will
Right.
allow that time.
Right.
So is that not what you're after?
Well, no, but I think that, we hear from the planning director and we hear from the sheriff, that they just don't have the staff to go out all
No,
the
I
time.
understand that, but the forum needed to have that discussion has been requested.
Well,
Is
and
that what you're after? That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Well, and I think not only the forum, but I think if we could put together a committee to come together with ideas.
The forum would allow the discussion.
Okay.
So that's my question.
Yes.
Is that what you're after?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Dolores Lucero.
Good morning. My name is Dolores Lucero, the ex-councilwoman of the city of Shasta Lake. I got 3 different papers here that I want to be reading totally separate because they're from another meeting that I read. So first, I'd like to say, I, Dolores Lucero, pleaded not guilty on false charges. Shasta County District Attorney Steve Carlton filed against me on March 27. I am innocent, I'm not perfect, but I don't lie. I will be holding a fundraising to show how the city of Shasta Lake has been breaking the law. I would display all the documents of wrongdoing, abuse, misconduct, conflict of interest, and more. So that fundraising will be taking place probably end of the month. So everybody will be welcome to come. It's a fundraising, and I will be notifying everybody and when it's going to be taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucero. That's all the speaker requests I have. Any others this morning? Then we'll move on to R1, the regular calendar. R1 is the recognition of our Employee of the Month. Now therefore be resolved that Mark Haslam, Deputy Sheriff, Sheriff's Office, is hereby named Shasta County Employee of the Month for September 2012. And be it further resolved that Mark Haslam is a great asset to the Sheriff's Office and the county. His ability to support his team members, to provide outstanding customer service, and to complete investigations efficiently make him a role model. The pride and dedication to his investigations and to the Major Crimes Unit team members displayed by Mark Haslam are remarkable and well-deserving of his recommendation as Employee of the Month.
Move approval.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Sheriff.
Good morning, Chairman Modi, members of the board, Tom Basenko, Shasta County Sheriff. Very proud today to have one of our employees recognized. Mark is an outstanding employee. He's very much involved in the Detectives Major Crimes Unit. He's had a number of assignments, which includes investigating very difficult cases such as elder abuse and also sexual abuse of children and adults as well. And he's been involved in some very in-depth fiduciary crimes such as embezzlement. And he investigates these crimes not only from a perspective for law enforcement, but very much heartfelt and empathy for the victims that are involved there, and throws himself into the cases and keeps digging and digging to have a full and complete investigation. He is very much a team player, and he helps out his colleagues wherever possible, whether it be involved in a search warrant or investigating crime or giving them some bits of advice on helping them out with their cases. We're very fortunate to have him as a member of our team, and thank you very much for the recognition as Employee of the Month. Mark?
Mark, on behalf of my fellow supervisors, it's a great honor to recognize you the Employee of the Month for Shasta County. I know firsthand that it takes a very special breed of people who can do major crimes work. It can be very disturbing at times, particularly when you're dealing with crimes against children, but certainly elder abuse and other kind of crimes that people commit against other human beings can sometimes be very atrocious. And our officers who can take on those challenges and solve those crimes are a breed set apart from others. And so certainly you are an extremely important employee, an exceptional person, and we are glad to recognize you as the Employee of the Month for September 2012. Congratulations. Also, we have a little goodie bag here for you. And in it, hold it out here. Yeah. In it is a rosewood pen gift set. Shasta County is engraved on the pen, and on the gift box is the Shasta County emblem. There's a DVD of the awards presentation, courtesy of Shasta County. There's a $25 gift certificate donated by the Mid-Management Bargaining Unit to Olive Garden Restaurant. A $25 gift certificate donated by the Department Head Forum to Outback Restaurant, and a $40 gift certificate to the local restaurant donated by the Deputy Sheriff's Association. And we certainly like to thank all of our organizations that make these donations each month to our employees. So at that point, it's your turn, Mark.
Supervisors, the sheriff, members of the sheriff's office. I didn't have a prepared speech, but I just want to thank you very much. This is a great honor for the recognition, and I got many years to go. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. My wife, Naomi.
Okay. If you join us, please. Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you to all the Sheriff Department employees for making it here today. Our next item is the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They may be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested person may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion and consideration. I have no advance requests.
Move approval. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Shasta County Board of Supervisors will recess and convene as the Shasta County Water Agency. The Shasta County Board of Supervisors does not receive any additional compensation or stipend for acting as the Shasta County Water Agency. First item is an update on the Shasta-Tama County Water Master District efforts. Mr. Minturn.
Good morning, Chairman Modi, members of the board, Pat Minturn, Public Works Director and Chief Engineer of the Water Agency. Before you today is an item related to water master districts. Provide a little background. California water law sets forth who has a claim to the water based upon based upon historical diversions and various factors. And sometimes, though, interpretation of those laws gets a little gray and folks dispute how the water should be allocated, and so the courts get involved, and eventually the courts issue a decree. When the courts issue a decree, sometimes they choose to also appoint a water master. And the water master is the person that actually goes out in the field and sees to it that it's implemented as the judge hopefully intended. And of course, there's always appeal back to the judge, but the judge doesn't really want to deal with the day-to-day issues, and they also want to have data gathered so there's a better understanding of how much water is in the creek during a given season, and they want to know historically who has been diverting what over a period of time. And so historically, that task has gone to the Department of Water Resources, the California Department of Water Resources. They have the expertise. It's basically a pretty simple engineering challenge to figure out how much water is flowing in a creek. You have certain control devices, weirs, and you go out there every day or every few days and you measure how much is in the creek, and then you go to your decree and you figure out how that gets allocated up, and it gets divided out amongst the various diverters, and the diversion boxes are set and locked, and that's how it's done. And there are 5 water master service areas in Shasta County. There are a couple other decrees as well that are not actually water master service areas, but there are 5 that are. Those are Bernie, Cow Creek, Hat Creek, Digger Creek, and North Fork Cottonwood Creek. And these are funded by assessments on property. So the various diverters pay in proportion to their water right, roughly. Smaller diverters pay a little more, but overall, it's spread based upon the size of everybody's water right. And for many years, the state subsidized these by about 50%. So if the water master on a given creek cost $50,000, 25 of that was charged to the property owners on their property taxes. The other half was absorbed through the general fund. Several years ago, the state government decided that general fund money being scarce, this was an area to cut back, and so the entire burden was shifted to the property owners. Also, natural increases in costs, personnel, payroll, retirements, benefits, caused that increase to be more than double. And so that attracted the attention of the diverters. Ranching's a difficult business. Agriculture with flood irrigation it's tough, and so they're very dollar-oriented. And so the Farm Bureau got involved, and they went to Sacramento, and they got some legislation approved on some of the local counties that created local water master district that could take over these duties if the locals wanted it. And this happened in Shasta County, Siskiyou, and in a similar area, similar fashion, Modoc and Lassen as well. And so we came before the board and appointed the members of that water master board pursuant to the legislation. You'll recall back in 2008, that group's been doing some research, came before this board about a month ago. The board directed staff to do some research and figure out how the other water master service areas have been faring under independent guidance and to report back to the board. The local Shasta-Tama Water Master Board was requesting a $45,000 grant or loan from this agency and other assistance to get started. And so this board wanted some more information before proceeding. So that's my report today that I bring before you. Of course, you have the staff report, but I'd like to go over it briefly, what we found out from Siskiyou, Modoc, and Lassen counties and the experiences they've had. In Siskiyou County, it was rather similar to Shasta in that a separate water master district was set up, independent of county government, independent of any other agency. It was over the Scott River and the Shasta River water master service areas. In that area, their assessments didn't just double a few years ago, they went up 8-fold. They went from $85,000 a year up to about $680,000 a year. The reason for that increase was partially because of the 50% funding, partially because of inflation, but mostly it was because the Department of Fish and Game has been demanding that they take out stream bed alteration agreements, and that was becoming adversarial. And so DWR felt the need for additional gauging facilities. The existing facilities were somewhat dilapidated. They couldn't say exactly how much water was going where, and so that was part of that increase. Nevertheless, it went independent. The costs were just very persuasive, and so the Siskiyou County Board of Supervisors provided startup funding, and they've also been providing legal services through County Counsel's office. And they this year was their first year providing service. The costs are still higher than they had been previously, whereas they had been $85,000 a year. Now it's on the order of $300,000 a year. They hired an independent consultant to do it. Most of the folks that are in that independent consulting group are former DWR water masters. So in effect, DWR, the same people are still pretty much running the diversions out in the field, subject to the judicial oversight, but now instead of being state employees, they are consultants reporting to this independent board. There really hasn't been enough experience yet. This is their first season to say how it's been going. The second example is Modoc County. In that county, the farm advisor took over briefly. Or the ag commissioner, excuse me. Freudian slip. The ag commissioner took over. And it was very adversarial. In that case, again, the assessments had more than doubled, and so they took over, and they've been charging $234,000 a year. But it was very adversarial. The diverters were still not happy with that oversight. Eventually, they demanded a separate standalone county agency, separate county department, and that has been formed, and they've been running that way for about a year now. And it's somewhat simmered down, but folks are still not happy at the prospect of having somebody else tell them how their water should be adjudicated in that area. It seems everybody has a separate idea of what the adjudication says, and they feel that they're very familiar with their water right, but perhaps it doesn't all add up. But nevertheless, they are up and running. In Lassen County, it was the Honey Lake Resource Conservation District that took over. And this was perhaps the most unsuccessful model, in that litigation quickly ensued. This was a sleepy little resource conservation district, just wanted to do something good, wanted to help. They got involved. They picked up the decree, they read what the decree said, and they implemented it the way they thought they saw on paper, and there was a dispute. And they weren't necessarily experts in water rights. That dispute led to litigation. I understand that there's currently a tolling agreement where basically it's a ceasefire, but it's still hanging out there. There's a lot at stake there. And the Resource Conservation District, which had been basically meeting on an impromptu basis, taking care of minor resource issues, now they find that 3/4 of their workload is arguing about water rights. So it has not been a particularly satisfactory arrangement there. Their costs have been somewhat controlled. They've gone from $66,000 years ago to $120,000 now, so probably a little cheaper than maybe what DWR might have charged. Here in Shasta County, the assessments used to total about $93,000 for the total 5 water master service areas. Currently, we're looking at around $200,000, $193,000 this year, $210,000 last year. So you see there's full cost recovery there. And the state, I've spoken with the water master, the supervising water master, Sean Pike, and he was going to be here today. I don't know, Mr. Pike is in the audience. The DWR anticipates stable arrangements under them if they were to continue in the next few years. Each of these other 3 counties were much more distant from Red Bluff, and Red Bluff is the Northern District office for DWR. We're somewhat closer, so the travel time is not quite so destructive to us. We're not quite so distant. Your staff report mentions that at the last meeting, there was a citizen and a property water rights holder from Digger Creek. Actually, that was from Hat Creek, and he raised questions about voting power and cost assessment and how that might change under an independent district. And the good news is that's all set by state law, so it can't change. Voting power to elect the board members is strictly based upon the volume of the water right. The costs of the water master area, 10% of that is spread to each customer, and the other 90% is spread based on volume. So a small diverter, such as the gentleman that got up and spoke, he pays a little more per gallon than the others, but it can't be drastically shifted. It can't be, really there's nothing for an independent water master board to do in terms of cost allocation. It's just take the total amount and divide it up per the same formula as today. One conclusion I would have is these are water rights are a property right, basically. It's a vested right in the property. And the courts ultimately decide property rights. When disputes come up in the local community regarding adjoining property owners, it goes to the courts to decide how this is settled. And this is true with water rights as well. The courts have issued these decrees. The water master is their servant, their technical servant, to go out, measure the water, determine how much is there, implement the decree. It's very much of a ministerial action. There's not discretion, or there shouldn't be discretion on the part of the water master. And so the model of an independent water district overseeing that, there are opportunities and risks. An independent board can better manage staff, can make the best decisions for how much how much water master service they want, and how to purchase it. And local is generally better. On the other hand, it is a property right, and it goes to the courts for fair adjudication. And a property owner that owns only 1 gallon a minute water right nevertheless owns that water right. And the DWR folks have talked about how they spend a lot of time with the small diverters. And it's, so this is the challenge and this is the trade-off. I understand that some folks from the Water Master District are here and they'd also like to address the board, and there may be some public comment. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Any questions of Mr. Minturn at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Minturn. Do you have a couple of requests to speak? First will be Paul Stout, followed by Bob Pierce.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, Chairman. I believe you have a copy of the charts that I provided to the staff here. We can probably skip page 2 because Pat pretty much took care of that, and that's fine. Give a good history and a good staff report, and basically that's what you're tasking him to do. The staff report that was very detailed, as you just saw. Some of the conclusions presented in the report pointed out that there are risks, technical, political, and legal, and that's a true statement. We feel, the SDWA feels, that the benefit of the local agency is the ability to control cost in the long run, okay? The SDW does not have all the answers. We understand there's risk, but we do have lots of agricultural experience with water and the water masters. In the 4 years I worked on this with Abe Hathaway, Shannon Wooten, and Mark Bidwell, I'm not an agriculture person, but I've learned that these people understand it, they know what to do, and they know that in the long run, we can probably bring this in about 20% cheaper than the DWR. Okay, that's sort of the last time there was the little guide, for example, that Pat talked about. I queried Mark and Abe and Shannon on what kind of support they had in the field. Each answered that they had 90% of their constituents wanted to go with the SDWD, or a local agency, okay? I thought that was a pretty good sign that there's some support out there, and also a sign that the little guy's getting supported too. Okay? The little guy's got to be at 90% somewhere. Some of the alternatives that Pat mentioned is that the board can decline this and go forward without any involvement, leave the water master in the hands of the DWR. We have queried a number of users, and as I said, 90% of them want to go forward. So I believe that we can control those costs, as I said, 20% better than DWR on the outset. We have a consultant on hold. We got bids, and they have come in approximately 20% cheaper than the present DWR model. And speaking of models, we modeled this thing after the Siskiyou exercise. So we're pretty close in line with what they did, and it was a benefit to us to be able to literally paraphrase some of their things and work out some of their understanding some of their issues and take care of in our board. In the past, the Shasta County Water Agency has provided loans, and that's essentially why we're here today, is to ask you to provide us a loan in order to get the startup cost done. Now, we have the opportunity through the county auditor to take an advance on the taxes. Our consultant is willing to help out in the short term until we get the tax rolls rolling correctly. Depending on when we decide to take over, also makes us, if we do this at the right time, then we can take the advance on the taxes and move on without the DWR gets paid off and we start with money in the bank, so to speak. Okay? That's it. We're basically asking you for a loan, and hopefully we can do that. Thank you.
I have one question for Mr. Stout. Have you guys had a chance to talk with Tehama County since they're part of this process?
Jim?
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Bob Pierce, followed by Sean Wooten.
Good morning, I'm Bob Pierce from Hack Creek, and my emphasis on July 24th should have been on the value added by Department of Water Resources for the safety and security, and not really changing the focus of the board. But even today, AB 1578 warns of the problems with leaving the Department of Water Resources. The Department of Water Resources has a long history of dealing with this very sensitive problem. They also have a good working relationship with allied agencies. What is the board offering us? The board is offering us a first-time water master for the same or a little different from what the DWR is charging. They can have little experience in day-to-day working with the California Water Code. It's not their main focus. It's not their main business. Would they know about the court-tested legal wording in the California Water Code? Then when you look at Mr. Minturn's reference to the voting, there is no 140-315 in the California Code. It can only be found in SB 516, setting up the water district. It is not in AB 1578 for Indian Valley, 1580 for Scotts Valley. When we went to Lassen, we were told that they did not have proportional voting, and I doubt seriously Modoc County has it. Speaking of legislature, where was the board when Gaines introduced AB 1247, which was to relieve the water master fees? He wants to reinstate the 50% because he realizes not only the water users are benefiting from the good control of water, but also everybody in California. So he wants to spread it out. Was the board behind him? Did they ever bring it up at a meeting? No. You have to ask yourself, have they even asked for enough money? Has the lawyer told them that yes, they can get it through? Or is this what they're asking for, a simple decree? Yeah, you bring it in and we'll bring it to the judge and for that much money, that's what it's going to cost you. Is there really that much of a benefit in this? Why aren't all the people that would benefit the most ready to put up the money? If they're going to gain from it, why won't they invest in it? When they hired a business consultant, the business consultant, he did say, well, stick with Department of Water Resources, that's your best bet. But he had to threaten to take them to court before they could collect enough money to pay him.
Mr. Pierce, I'm going to ask you to sum up because your 3 minutes are up. If you could just sum up, please.
Okay, are the people for it or just apathetic to it? Maybe what the people don't know will hurt them. Thank you.
Mr. Pierce, one question for you. You mentioned the board several times, and I'm not sure which board you're referring to.
I was referring to the Water Board, excuse me, the Shasta-Tehama County Water Master Board.
Great, thank you. Sean Wooten.
Chairman, Board of Supervisors, the bottom line is we were given this project with no money. The board is made up of users. There's 2 large users and 2 small users, I being one of the small ones, and 2 people at large. The representative of Deer Creek is in the process of being appointed, and it is Hank Pritchard, whose house and every place burned down in the fire, so there's a little bit of a lag time to get him on board. I invited him to our last meeting. He was unable to attend because they're in the process of trying to rebuild their water conveyance system. So he's very, very busy in person. So it's in place, it's starting. The request for money is still there because we didn't have any startup money. The assessments will pay our bills. If there's any money left over from DWR at the end of the year, that might backfill part of what we're requesting because we need some legal fees to get started. To address Mr. Pierce's concerns, the bill that he mentioned about reinstating the 50%, I didn't think it was worth my time for the simple reason the state's not going to go for that. It took them 3 years to take the money that they were putting into the assessments out, and they're not going to put it in on one bill. I just couldn't see even addressing it. There was no reason to. And so what little help that we can get from you is going to be appreciated. We're striving to do this the best we can. The risks we understand are there, but the decree and the water code is going to take care of the users and any conflicts between the users because you're either living within the decree or you're not. The water code dictates the allocations or the assessments to the allocations. And so we cannot mess with that. Little will stay little and large will stay large. We cannot change that. We do not want to change that. We're just trying to go along with the service to make it as good or better if we can. Local control is our focus because, like I said before, I don't fear too much within the district. What my fear is going to be from government agencies dictating things we have to deal with. And that's going to probably entail the legal services that we're trying to build our slush fund for. We're going to try to hold our assessments about the same that the DWR is charging with the insight of the future that we can lower them down. Our consultant, Vestra Services, is very, very inept at trying to streamline this. She's got some very, very good ideas. And I think local hiring is going to take care of some of the travel time, so we're going to streamline these fees and make them more in line. So in conclusion, any help that we can get from the board is going to be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten. That's all the requests I have to speak at this point. Back to the board. Mr. Hawes.
I would like to call Mr. Minturn back up again and just ask, is there sufficient funds in the water agency to do a loan? And now there is sufficient funds from their assessments to pay it back. I take it. I mean, that's what we're assuming. Is that true?
Take the first question first. The water agency is funded through a Prop 13 tax base. It was heavily depleted by the Elk Trail project and Craigview project. We are awaiting reimbursement from the state on those. Those are eligible reimbursement costs, and so the water agency will be in a position going forward to take on this and other challenges. Of course, we've got other issues out there that we're dealing with on the state level, Delta Vision and groundwater ordinances and so forth. But this is potentially within the resources. The board could allocate that. The board could also bring it into next year's budget if you wanted a comprehensive look at the water agency. But something on the order of $45,000 could probably be afforded.
And how long would it take for them to repay that back?
It's not currently in their operational budget, as I understand it, to repay that loan. They, right now, in the staff report, you see, well, I won't go to the overhead. Currently, DWR is charging $193,000 this year for all 5 water mastered service areas. The 3 that are under consideration here, Bernie, Cow, and Hat, those total currently in this year $177,900. So call it $178,000. The Water Master, Shasta-Tama Water Master District proposes $172,000. So if that loan were to be repaid over, say, 5 years, that would be $9,000 a year, so the assessments would go up slightly. So it depends on the repayment, but of course these are estimates, and it's possible that their actual costs would be lower, but they would have to budget to repay this money if it were to be repaid.
Another question, are we sure that the state's going to stay at the level they are now and not raise it some more?
Well, first on the
guess.
potential downside, Senator Gaines did introduce legislation. We were not aware of that until afterwards that would have lowered the assessments by returning the supplement. But I would tend to agree with Mr. Wooten that it's a long shot that that would be a use of future general fund monies. As for raising assessments, I'm not intimately aware of how the state is operating day to day. Mr. Pike said that they anticipate consistency going forward. They don't see any big price spikes. The current pension reform will probably dampen somewhat rises in state compensation. So I would think that probably the state's costs, I'm going to guess they're going to rise with inflation. That's kind of what Mr. Pike implied. But there's uncertainty both with the Water Master District and also with DWR, but I would say there's probably less with DWR.
Thank you.
Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chair Modi. Mr. Minturn, your conclusion doesn't really conclude. It states both sides of the issues, but it doesn't come with a recommendation from you. Have you come to a recommendation?
Well, I guess since the last meeting, as I look into this more, I see the property rights aspect, and I see the importance of the courts in overseeing the property rights aspect. And I see a greater certainty and stability with DWR to some extent. DWR is technicians. They don't necessarily they haven't been demonstrated to have any bias, any desire to change the status quo or to favor one user over another. They're engineers, and they clearly have the equipment. They clearly have the expertise. This is just a little sideshow on their business. They have lots of registered professional engineers, and if they were to be dragged into a court of law, they could very clearly explain what they've done. They've maintained their records, and their equipment is top-notch. And so there's a level of consistency there. There's no history in the last 50 years of DWR falling down on the job. Not that the Water Master District would, but there's a level of certainty there with DWR that I don't think any other agency can bring to the table. I don't think the county could necessarily bring that level of technical expertise to the table that DWR has. DWR, with their snow surveys and with their operation of the CVP, the State Water Project and so forth, they're set up. They do this monitoring, they do this testing, And so they would have credibility in a court of law to stand behind the decrees and to be able to explain to a judge what they did. The Shasta-Tehama Water Master District offers opportunities, as I said, in terms of somewhat lower costs. But the cost difference potentially is not that great. It's not like Siskiyou and Lassen and Modoc, where their local operating costs are lower, the cost of living is lower, and Shasta is 70 miles closer than the Shasta River or the Scott River. So it's a matter of risk. If you're willing to take some risk and go with this new Water Master District, they might save a little money, and that's the reward. But I'm hesitant to recommend that. On the side of protecting water rights, the courts will decide what the water rights are. And there again, I think perhaps DWR has a slight advantage in that they're strictly a ministerial function, and they understand that. The water master, who is a state employee, he's not going to lose his job if these water master districts go independent or if some diverter is unhappy. He's going to make his best call, and he's going to go home at night, and he's not going to worry about it. Whereas with a small independent district, perhaps there is more uncertainty there. But ultimately, I must leave it to this board to decide whether that risk and reward is worth taking.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haas.
Well, there again, we're back to the state. We're trusting the state. And I think this board knows how well we can trust the state, right, Mr. Lees? We haven't been able to trust them too much the last few years because they continue to keep taking, and I'm not so sure that they're going to set on this number. I mean, they have a lot of problems, a lot of budget problems, and they're going to look at every place they can get more. So, and I've talked to people in these other counties. In fact, I have my brother-in-law lives in Modoc County, and they're happy with their system now. I don't know where all you've got information here that says that they're not all happy, but he's one on a creek that's dry right now that can't get any water. No matter what the water master does, he can't give you water if it's not there. And I don't think it's that difficult to go out and measure what's going through a weir and tell how much water you're getting. Larry Ferrero's been doing that for the last few years in different creeks around here. He knows how to measure the water, and he's taught a lot of the ranchers how to measure their water. So I just don't know that we can sit here and take the chance. I mean, we were given this opportunity to do this, and we were charged with getting this committee. So I'm going to move that we give them a loan from the water agency. Of course, a loan that's going to be repaid. So we're not going to give them taxpayers' money. We'll see where that goes.
Okay, I have a couple of requests to speak.
Well, point of order, Chair Modi. I don't believe we're on the agenda for action today, just for discussion.
Correct.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay.
I thought
So,
we were.
thank you, Supervisor Haas. Just wanted to make sure we understood that.
Okay.
Ruben, go
To
ahead.
clarify, yes, one of the actions that's available is for the board to give direction to staff as appropriate, so that would be the only potential action item.
That's my direction then.
Well, Supervisor Keough, do you want to let Mr. Lees go first?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
You
you.
want Mr. Lees to go first, or? Go ahead. Mr. Lees, if you have a comment,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I wanted to reiterate what we're asking the board to consider here today. As Mr. Cruz mentioned, we're asking the board to consider further action and determine what that action should be. But I also want to clarify that we are not saying they should or should not be their independent water district at all. That is their call. I mean, a comment was made that they have been giving this. They actually haven't been given this. They have asked for this. And so it's not our decision at this point, Board of Supervisors' decision, to determine whether or not they should have an independent water master or stay with the state. The question that they're posing to us today is just that, are we in a position to loan, I heard loan them this money, the startup money, in order for them to get going. And that's basically the only direction I think we as staff are looking forward to hearing from the board on.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to reiterate Mr. Lees' comments. The Water Master District has been established by state law. It will continue regardless of whether or not the board decides to loan money or otherwise advance in any format. They will still exist and can take whatever actions are appropriate in their independent authority.
Supervisor Kehoe.
Thank you, Mr. Modi. This is an excellent staff report. And based on the testimony that I've heard this morning and the staff report, I see no compelling reason for the county to submerge itself in the operations of STWD. And I am not supportive of a loan or a grant, should that matter come before this body.
Mr. Cruz, do you care to comment on the one gentleman's statement that some code is not in the code, one section is not in the code?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Supervisor Modi. There is a section in the code. It's in what's called the Water Code Appendix. In the Water Code Appendix, section 140-315 does in fact specifically state that the voting is weighted proportionally to the amount of flow allocated to the water right under the decree as stated in the staff report. So it is there. It's in the Water Code Appendix.
Thank you. So I have one point of clarification, and as you was well stated, that the only question before us is the financial question. So for them to leave DWR and go independent, theoretically, if they had their own money, is it a vote of their water users? Who determines if they want to go independent from DWR?
It's my understanding that they, basically by statute, they are already independent of DWR in that respect. I mean, they just need to, unfortunately, they need the resources to hire an attorney primarily to go into court to become the appointed water master of the various decrees and cases that are outlined in the statute. Once they've done that, they are then the water master, and they will then take whatever actions are appropriate in connection with administering those decrees. And I'll defer to Mr. Minturn if I've misstated anything.
No, I understand that it takes, Mr. Cruz is accurately reflected as far as he went. To restate, there are 3 decrees that are in play, and the Shasta-Tehama Water Master District would have to petition the court, and I understand that that takes, I've heard 15% of the water right holders. Take some percentage, and in order to reopen the issue. Then they go before the court, and the court may decide that 1 or 2 or 3 of those districts, water master service areas, should be brought under their oversight. And if they do that, then the next irrigation season, they would have those duties, and the assessments would flow to them instead of to DWR.
Also, I heard Mr. Wooten indicate that there's a gentleman from Tehama County that will be appointed to their board, but what I didn't hear is whether or not Tehama County Supervisors is going to contribute to this project. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, I called up the Public Works Director, Mr. Gary Anton, and he told me that he'd get back to me if there was any prospect of that, and he didn't get back to me. My understanding is that they are not interested in participating.
Do you know what percentage of the users are in Tehama County, or what, I guess maybe what volume of water is in?
There's 5 water master service areas, and they're the Digger Creek one. And Digger Creek is not one that the Shasta-Tehama Water Master District is particularly interested in right now. But my overview, from looking at it, more than half of the diverters on Digger Creek are in Tehama County. I'm going to say 2/3.
But looking at your, by numbers, it's about 5%. It looks like of their budget, then therefore comes from the Digger Creek part, the $8,800.
Yes.
Supervisor Kehoe?
Thank you, Mr. Modi. Mr. Minturn, I notice in the second to the last paragraph of your staff report on page 1, you indicate in 2008, Senator Annisted and the California Farm Bureau introduced SB 516. Well, as an alternative, why not secure a $45,000 loan from the Farm Bureau rather than the county?
Certainly, many
And
alternatives.
that's not a question I expect a response from you.
Actually, one bit of input I would have is the Farm Bureau has provided offices and so forth to the Shasta-Tama Water Master District, but also I understand that in, I believe it was Lassen County, there was some talk of recourse to the Farm Bureau, and the Farm Bureau said that they had already invested over $50,000 in the effort, and they felt that they've done their part.
Well, we're doing, the motion was not,
Bring it back?
Well, I perhaps should clarify, Supervisor Hawes, do you have a motion on the
Well, I
pending?
just, my motion is that we consider that, and so we'll have to bring it back at another time, right?
If I may clarify, is your motion to consider a $45,000 loan to the Shasta-Tama Water District? Okay.
okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Do I get to,
You can, clear. I can weigh in a little bit more if you want. It's up to you.
well, I was going to pass the gavel. Can I,
You can pass it.
can I, can second when I'm in the chair, or can I, or do I have to pass the gavel?
I believe you can second as the chair.
Okay, then I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
You want some discussion?
Under discussion, Mr. Minturn, can you tell us a little bit more about the water fund? You mentioned that potential to balance that water fund from the state of California with reimbursements, but where does that fund stand today? And I know we're not making a decision today. I just want to understand the nature of the fund that we would be potentially loaning from and the responsibilities of that fund in other areas of the county.
I have not checked the fund balance within the last few weeks, but I think its fund balance is probably on the order of $50,000. That's probably about what our total cash balance is right now in the water agency budget. It was heavily depleted, right down just virtually to zero during the course of the Elk Trail project. We got reimbursement from the state for a couple of the early engineering documents. They found that those were eligible for reimbursement. But that money has been plowed back into Elk Trail in other respects for interim financing. So our fund balance, including receivables, is probably $60,000, $70,000 right now. Our obligations and we continue to receive revenue of nearly $100,000 a year. Our obligations are to support water planning efforts, the groundwater ordinance, the integrated water management plan that we're in 5 other counties with. We monitoring legislation, things like Senator Gaines' bill, but especially the Delta Vision and efforts for the state to drag the watershed into the Delta's problems and make us the source of water to fix the Delta. All of these things require staff efforts and require monitoring to bring items before this board. And periodically, these items do come before this board. Also, other projects that we have at the moment, we are really just now recovering from Elk Trail. But these are obligations, and water districts such as the Elk Trail annexation was huge, but also Craigview. We're wrapping up Craigview, and we're paying the interim financing charges for the Craigview water treatment plant. It just came online this week, the new treatment plant. That's $1 million project. The general fund is providing the cash, but the water agency is reimbursing the general fund for the interest expense that's lost. So all of these various areas where the board has directed these resources, $45,000 would be about a half a year's revenue to the water agency. And if the money were repaid, of course, there would be no long-term impact. But it right now is not the best time to be drawing off half a year's revenue.
Supervisor Hartman?
I'm not opposed to bringing this back and looking further into the loan, but I do have concerns about, like you said, Pat, the Delta issues and other projects. So if it comes back, I want a clear plan of the timeframes for paying it back. And I would like more information on if Tehama County will participate as well, and even the Farm Bureau. So.
Supervisor Haas.
We're looking at a 5-year payback? That's what I heard.
I think that's something that's been discussed.
I think that's something that Mr. Minturn brought up. I'm not sure I heard any of them say it.
Well, when it comes back, we need to know what the time period, the payback time period is going to be.
Mr. Baugh?
Thank you, Chair Modi. My concern is this. I fully support the independent water master agency. I think it's the right thing to have local control. The challenge is the use of scarce county funds and the availability specifically of a department that doesn't have a lot of available funds. I do support, I think Supervisor Hartman, you said it well, I do support bringing it to the board for that discussion. Would like to see additional clarification, a repayment plan. I'd like to kind of have you open up the lid on that fund, give us a review of the use of those dollars and your kind of estimated future use of those dollars. If I were voting today on use of the funds, I would be voting no, but that's not what we're voting today on. And that reason for the no vote would be simply because we don't have enough information today. But I would like to see the information and perhaps can be swayed.
I have a question for County Council. It was mentioned that there were concerns about the county being immersed into the operation as that of the water master. So I need to know, is that a possibility, or is that something that we can protect ourselves from not be, other than if we're just making a financial loan, could we end up being part of the operations?
I would not say that that would be the case, simply if we're just providing a loan of monies. Of course, the contract would certainly indicate that they are two separate independent entities, as we usually do. It would just simply be a financial transaction loan, and the various terms would be brought back for the board's consideration and proposal as to what would be mutually agreeable. But I would imagine that the Water Master District would want to maintain its independent authority as it has under statute, and I'm sure the Board of Supervisors would not want to be involved in that process.
Mr. Lees?
And I think certainly one of the areas would be how will the loan be secured? And it would certainly be our intent and my recommendation that we don't secure it with any interest in the district itself, and we leave it independent.
My only other comments I would just echo what Supervisor Baugh said. I think I have exactly the same concerns. The money we have, can we afford to do that? And I think I'd almost have the same vote that you would have today, as you mentioned. So okay. So we do have.
I just want clarification of
Go
the
ahead.
motion.
The motion, I believe, is to bring it back with further information for action and further information on the possibility of a loan.
Right.
And I think there were several points that were made with some additional information about whether or not there could be other players or not. Is that okay? All right. That's the motion, and there's the second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Minturn.
Chairman Modi, may I ask for the time frame you're interested in this coming back? We'll need a couple of weeks, I think, to.
Well, yeah, I think it'll be appropriate.
least.
I know I won't be here next week.
Right.
And then we've got some other things coming up.
We have another.
Maybe a couple weeks, depending on how it works out.
Okay.
Or longer.
Okay. Might be a little longer because we do have another vacant board meeting, and we've got some other things.
The Shasta County Water Agency will adjourn and reconvene the Shasta County Board of Supervisors. I'm going to ask for about a 5-minute break so I can go take care of my voice. So we are adjourned for 5 minutes.